Hey, y'all, I'm Levi Jones. I'm the founder and head coach of Guerilla Realty, and I want to talk about the quick answer to the question of how to get listing leads in real estate. Now, there is a source of listing leads that doesn't require 4+ hours of cold calling. It doesn't cost a fortune to generate, and it basically has no competition because they actually want to talk to you. Now, I know it sounds too good to be true, and it's not some revolutionary lead gen tactic that no one knows about. By the way, those don't exist. It is about having a deep understanding of the real estate buying cycle and then knowing exactly where to find the sellers in that cycle. This is the exact process that we use to generate 13+ CMA requests each and every month. And remember, Guerilla Realty is an actual real estate team operating out of North Carolina. So we've actually tested the ideas we teach, and this isn't theory. Now, we do a full webinar on how to get 13+ CMA requests every single month. We call it the Limitless Listing Leads, and you can access it for free by clicking the link in the description. It includes the exact scripts, lead sources, step-by-step playbooks, and all the tools you need to execute it for free. So first, we'll talk about the absolute best source for listing leads. If you think you need more seller leads or to spend more time cold calling, you don't. You need to stop ignoring the listing leads that are already in your pipeline. All right, before we get into our super secret seller lead source, let me go through some of the stuff that we've actually tested, because this is not us just choosing at random some seller lead source that we think is the best, and we've not tested all. We've tested it all. So you guys probably have too, but you've tested the list. You call up FSBOs, expireds, the divorce, the probate, the pre-foreclosures. You guys get the idea. Any list out there, we've called through them. We've done the cold calling thing. It's long, it's burned out, gets you burned out, etc. We've called the list. And this is why, quite frankly, it's no fun. It gets rejected a lot. Now, lots of agents have success with these lists. I just don't think that they're the best source for seller leads. Then we've done all of the buying leads, the pay up front, per lead, Zillow, super expensive. Now, only if you're on a flex team. We've bought leads through realtor.com. And when we've done some of the pay to close, like OpCity, et cetera, as well. Again, nothing wrong with them. They're just very, very expensive. The ROI, in fact, isn't there. And then we've done the paid Facebook and Google ads. Again, nothing necessarily wrong with them. They can be very expensive. But more importantly, particularly when it comes to the Facebook ads, the length of time that it takes to incubate these leads is just prohibitive. And I would categorize all of these as super expensive, but we also tried one other source, okay? And the other source that we've tried, and in my opinion beats out all of the others, is the best source for seller leads is buyer leads. Now, hear me out for a moment, okay? Let's actually go through the numbers and I'll prove my point. But they're free. They don't have any competition. In other words, when you call a FSBO, you're the 40th agent to call. When you call a buyer lead, you're probably the first agent to talk to them. It doesn't require cold calling because you can generate warm buyer leads at any time. There's an unending supply of them. And here's the best part is, if you do it right, they actually want to talk to you. Unlike when I'm cold calling through a list and they're like, oh my gosh, it's another agent. These people actually want to talk to you. So you're not just facing rejection after rejection after rejection. That's why buyer leads are the best. But again, let me prove it to you by the numbers why they're there. And some of you, I can already tell, are probably like rolling your eyes to the back of your head. But again, let's go through the numbers. So this data is from NAR, and this is a split out of all buyer leads. Some of you may have even seen this. This is the most recent profile of buyers and sellers as of 2025, the last one that they released. Okay. And on this profile, they basically split out where these buyer leads are at. Okay. 21% of them are first-time home buyers. In other words, they were renting or living with their mom or whatever, and now they're purchasing a property. These people won't have a home to sell, so they're not sellers, okay? 28% of them are what we call non-primary. These are people buying a second home, or perhaps they're investors. Again, they don't necessarily have a home to sell as well. So that immediately gets rid of, most of or about half of the buyer leads. But here's the thing I want to sort of drive home to you. 51% of all buyer leads have a home to sell. And this is an important statistic for you, because if you know this and you know how to harness this, more importantly, you can generate a ton of buyer leads and effectively mine the sellers out of them. Okay. And this is absolutely the best source for seller leads. So let me walk you through what a timeline might look like. All right. So I want you to assume for a moment, and this may be a gigantic assumption, but I want you to assume for a moment that you run one playbook. What's a playbook? A playbook is just your go-to trick. This is the step-by-step that you can follow, run it again and again, and get the same results. And what we have a bunch of different playbooks that we've worked on as a team. In fact, we've written over 31 different playbooks that we generate leads on. But let's assume that you run one playbook and you generate 80 leads a month. Okay, again, that may be a big assumption for some of you because you may have never even sniffed 80 leads a month. But I'm going to show you in a minute how to do that. But let's assume for a moment that you generate 80 leads. Out of those 80 leads, 41 of them will be sellers. Again, statistically, 51% will be selling their current home. You do the math, that's 41 sellers out of those 80 leads. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, that's great, Levi, but not all of those sellers are local. Well, you're right. About 24% of them will be relocations. So that takes us from 41 sellers to 31 local sellers. Again, you're probably already like doing the mental math. You're like, oh, this is better than I thought. But out of those 31 local sellers, the reality is we're not going to get a hold of them all. In fact, the typical answer rate when we talk to these 30 or when we call through these 31 local sellers is about 55%, about half. That leaves us with 17 contacts, okay? 17 potential sellers that we're going to be able to have a conversation with. Now, here's where the magic happens. We're going to apply our script. Again, I'll go over that later in this video. But when we apply that script where we convert these buyers to sellers, we're going to get roughly about a 75% conversion rate. That equals 13 CMAs per month. Again, I'm going to ask the question, if you have 13 CMAs, how many of them could you ultimately convert into listings? Okay. Now, we convert about 3 to 6 listings per month. But again, if you look back, it starts with generating 80 leads, and that's what we'll go over next. All right, so let's go through the $0 listing lead engine. The real problem that most agents face when it comes to getting listing leads from their buyers is generating enough buyer leads. And no, you don't have to buy leads from Zillow or run open houses or something like that. We want to show you a simple, repeatable playbook for generating 80 plus buyer leads every single month. All right, so I know I made a massive assumption when I said, hey, let's assume you generate 80 leads a month. But it does start with that. If you want to generate a lot of CMA requests, it means we have to generate lots of leads and probably more leads than you think you need. So the first question I have for you is, do you have a buyer lead playbook? Now, some of you may say, yeah, I'm already generating that, in which case, great. If you're not, and you don't have a buyer lead playbook, in other words, something that you can follow each and every month to generate those 80 leads, I'm going to give you one today. We're going to do a very super high level version. I'm going to link to a video where we go much more in depth on this playbook. But the playbook that we run regularly each and every month to generate 80 plus leads is our Facebook Marketplace playbook. And it's one of my favorites because it costs $0. You don't have to spend a lot of money. I actually don't spend a lot of time on it either, usually less than 30 minutes a week. And I easily generate 80 plus leads. Now, here's the high level view of it, because you may be thinking, Facebook Marketplace, what in the world are you talking about? You can generate that many leads? The answer is absolutely. Here's what it looks like. Step 1, we're going to borrow a listing. Step 2, we're going to write a high converting ad. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this session talking about what a high converting ad are, but there's some principles that you want to follow each and every time. Again, check out the video I'm linking to so that you can get the detailed, step by step of this. And then I'm going to post that ad to Facebook Marketplace. I'm not going to just do it once, though. I'm going to do it at least 6 times. Why 6 times? Well, I'm trying to get to 80 leads. And if I throw up one ad, I might generate 5, 10, 15 leads. If I want to make sure that I'm going to generate 80 leads, I'm going to do it 6 different times, at least. You can do it more, but at least 6 different times. And the high converting ad also needs a high converting real estate website connected to it. Again, that'll all be covered in the video I linked to. All right, so let's finally talk about converting buyer leads into listing appointments. So once you have enough buyer leads, the final step is to quickly qualify those leads and find the seller appointments. And it starts with the simple script and an offer of value. Let's go through that now. All right, some of you I know are already thinking, that's great, Levi, we got buyer leads. I've never converted a buyer lead to a seller lead. And I know that this is going to sound crazy, but it's likely just because, very simply, you haven't thought of your buyer leads as a source of seller leads. Again, they are. We went through the numbers here, but let me walk you through the script that we use to convert our buyer leads to seller leads at a very high rate. In other words, we're going to get that 51% of sellers that are out there. So we have our script at Callster. Callster, by the way, is all of our scripts, and it has an AI call trainer. In other words, you can actually practice the scripts on AI with nothing to lose. Once you start getting yeses from the AI, it translates very naturally over to actual buyers and sellers. However, I don't want to get too in depth there. Basically, again, we're assuming a reach rate of about 55%. When we use our script, we're going to get about 75% of them to request a CMA. And again, if we started out with 80 leads, now the result is 13 CMA requests. So let me quickly go through the script with you. Okay. So the very first thing is you're going to call and you're going to say, hey, I saw you were interested in 123 Whitney Drive. Okay. And that's just the address of the property that we were advertising. Did you find everything you need? Now, here's the part where you're going to all empathize and you're all going, you'll immediately nod because you get we call it the immovable wall. They go, yep, I'm all set. They're ready to just get you off the phone, jettison this phone call, right? And this is where you insert the script. And it's going to say, hey, no problem. Hey, by the way, I have a quick question for you. When you do eventually buy something, will you be selling your current home or are you going to be keeping it? Now, if they're a first-time home buyer, if they're a non-primary, they're going to go, yeah, I'm not selling anything. Perfect. No problem. You just found out that they're only a buyer lead. In other words, you can continue on, and we have a whole script on how to approach them if they're just a buyer lead. However, if they say, actually, we want to find our home first. And again, we can expect that about 37% of them will have a local home to sell. That's when we can offer them our CMA. And we have a whole bulletproof CMA. I'll actually try to link to it on this email, but it says, hey, it's a professional price opinion. We go deep with 50-point statistical analysis. I'd love to help you find the value of your home. Just if you're curious, it's a great starting point to at least know what you might get out of your home. Is that something you might be interested in? And when you offer that, this is an irresistible bribe. This is something that everyone's like, well, yeah, actually, if they give you any sort of pushback, you just go, well, why not? It's completely free. It only takes me a couple of minutes. And again, most people say yes to this because it's something of value without having any strings attached. And it is important that you're willing to offer this without strings. That's how you build trust and relationships. The cool part is once you offer them this CMA and you say, hey, you could get X value from their home, all of a sudden the wheels start turning and you would be amazed at how many of these turn into actual listings just from a starting point of offering something of value how much their home is worth. I want you to imagine for a moment that you were able to generate 13 CMA requests every single month. Seriously, people who are looking for a new home and want to know the value of their current home. The question I have for you is, how many listings could you secure out of those 13 CMA requests? And when I ask this question to a group of agents, inevitably I get answers that are all over the board. The one answer I never hear, 0. So let's start converting those buyer leads into the sellers you've been wanting. Now remember, if you want our private webinar on limitless listing leads, including all the tools, the scripts, and the exact step-by-step, the lead gen playbooks we use, just click the link in the description. Now, if this content is helpful for you, we would appreciate a like and subscribing to the channel. We do 2 videos a week and we don't want you to miss it. See you next time.